Most people think electric cars are luxury toys for the rich, complicated, expensive, and completely out of reach for everyday drivers. But here's the shocker. China just launched a four-wheeled SUV with air conditioning and even solar charging for only $2,000. That price flips the whole story on its head. Because while big automakers are asking 30, 40, even 50,000 for an EV, this little machine costs less than a new iPhone Pro. So how is this possible? What corners were cut? What tricks were used? And could a $2,000 solar-powered SUV actually work in real life? Stick around, because the answers will surprise you even more than the price tag. Here's the truth about electric cars right now. You've been told they're the future, clean, modern, high-tech, but for most people, they're completely out of reach. A Tesla? That's basically the price of a house deposit. Even so-called budget EVs from big brands can run you $20, $30, even $40,000. And what do you really get for that? A car that saves you on gas. Sure, but only after years of payments, higher insurance, and batteries that cost more than an entire used car to replace. That's the hidden reality. Electric cars have been sold as eco-friendly solutions, but the industry has kept them locked behind premium price tags. Here's the villain in this story, the big automakers themselves. They love to talk about green revolutions and future mobility, but their real business model has been simple. Make EVs a status symbol, something to show off in wealthy neighborhoods, not something built for crowded streets and everyday families. And that's where the problem hits you, because if the average person can't afford the so-called car of the future, is it really the future at all? But it gets crazier, because this tiny $2,000 SUV from ChangLi shows that the story doesn't have to be written that way. And here's where the plot flips. Out of nowhere comes a name almost nobody outside of China had heard before, ChangLi, a company that doesn't build luxury models, doesn't chase prestige, and doesn't care about showing off. Instead, they drop something so radical it feels almost unreal. A fully electric, four-wheeled SUV with air conditioning and solar charging for about $2,000. That's not just a cheap option, that's a statement. Because while Tesla and BYD aim for the wealthy and upper middle class, ChangLi basically asked, what about everyone else? What about the students, the retirees, the delivery drivers, the small families in tight cities who just need something simple, affordable, and practical? Think of it like David walking into a field of Goliaths. Everyone else is swinging giant swords of tech hype and premium pricing, while ChangLi shows up with a sling made of one thing: ultra affordability. And the craziest part? This little SUV doesn't feel like a toy. It's small, yes. Compact, sure, but it's an actual car you can use. The hero of this story isn't just ChangLi, it's you. Because for once, there's a vehicle designed around your budget, your daily commute, your real-world needs, not a fantasy spec sheet built for bragging rights. But let me tell you this, the moment people first saw it, disbelief spread like wildfire. And that's exactly where the next part of the story begins. The moment ChangLi's $2,000 SUV hit the streets, something wild happened. Photos and short clips started flying across TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. People weren't just sharing it, they were tagging their friends with captions like, "Is this even real?" Some laughed and said it looked like a toy car for kids. Others argued it was perfect for tight cities where parking feels impossible. Memes popped up. Threads on Reddit debated whether it was genius or junk. And inside auto groups, the question lit up, what on earth did they strip out to make a car this cheap? But then the truth began leaking out. People who tested it were stunned. It wasn't plastic junk on wheels. It was metal-bodied. It had actual working air conditioning. It had 4 wheels instead of the wobbly 3-wheel setups you usually see at this price. Suddenly, the conversation flipped. Instead of mocking it, people started wondering, could this actually work for me? Could I really own a car for less than the cost of a smartphone upgrade? And here's the hook. When the real features came out, the story got even more shocking. Because this wasn't just a meme car. It had design choices, build quality, and daily usability that nobody expected for $2,000. So let's pull back the curtain. How does this toy-looking SUV actually hold up in the real world? At first glance, the ChangLi looks almost too small to take seriously. It's about the size of a mini SUV. Short, narrow, and easy to mistake for a quirky city toy. But here's the shocker. It's not flimsy plastic. The body is made of actual metal. That means when it gets bumped in traffic, you're not watching panels crack like a cheap scooter shell. It holds up. And because it's 4-wheeled, it drives with real stability. That alone makes it leagues better than the budget 3-wheeled EVs that wobble on every corner. Step inside, and you notice something else. The seating is higher than you'd expect. That gives drivers a clear view of the road, which is critical in crowded cities where every inch counts. Then there are the details. Mini roof rails on top, a touch of ground clearance that makes it look tougher than it is, even little style choices like headlights and taillights that are simple but functional. It's clear the designers weren't aiming for luxury, but they didn't ignore personality either. The real superpower of its design? Parking. You can slot this thing into spaces where a normal sedan wouldn't even dream of fitting. For anyone living in cramped cities, that alone is a game changer. So yeah, it looks small, but fragile? Not at all. In fact, it's built with just enough practicality that once you see it in action, you stop laughing and start thinking, wait, this could actually work. But here's where the surprise gets even bigger, because once you step inside, the comfort isn't what you'd expect at this price either. Here's what most people expect at this price: cramped seats, bare plastic panels, and the feeling you're sitting inside a glorified golf cart. But sit inside the ChangLi, and the story changes fast. First, space. Believe it or not, 4 adults can actually sit in it, not with luxury legroom, but comfortably enough for daily commutes, school runs, or market trips. And because the seating is upright, it feels roomier than you'd imagine just looking at the outside. Then there's the dashboard. Simple? Absolutely. But cheap and ugly? Not at all. The controls are straightforward, the layout makes sense, and you don't feel like you're in a toy. It's stripped down, but in a way that feels intentional, almost like minimalism with a purpose. And here's the kicker: air conditioning. That alone is something you'd expect missing in a bargain basement EV. Yet, it's here, cooling the cabin, turning hot summer drives into something bearable. Add working lights, indicators, and even little design touches that nod to bigger SUVs. And suddenly, the $2,000 joke feels like a serious daily tool. This is where expectations break. You think you're buying a cheap gadget, but you end up with something practical, usable, and dare I say, kind of fun. But wait, the real test of any EV isn't just how it feels inside. It's what powers it, and that's where the ChangLi story gets even more surprising. Now let's be real. The first question on everyone's mind is obvious. Okay, but how does it actually drive? Because a $2,000 price tag makes most people assume it crawls along slower than a bicycle. Here's the conflict. No, it's not going to beat Teslas off the line. It's not built for highways or racetracks. But here's the solution: for daily city driving, it's surprisingly capable. The motor is small, compact, and efficient, giving you speeds of 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. That's about the pace of city traffic anyway. Enough to weave through busy streets, get to work, drop kids at school, or run errands. And what about the heart of the whole system? The battery. ChangLi went with lithium-ion tech, the same type used in modern EVs everywhere. It's not oversized, but it doesn't have to be. At 3 to 4 kilowatt hours, you get about 50 to 70 kilometers of range per charge. For city life, that's more than enough. Charging? Plug it into a normal 220-volt wall socket at night, and in 6 to 8 hours, you're good to go by morning. No fancy charging station needed. And here's something clever: the battery is removable. Live in an apartment? No problem. Pop it out, carry it upstairs, and charge it like a laptop. So here's the punchline. What sounds laughable at first, a $2,000 EV actually delivers exactly what it promises. Enough speed, enough range, enough practicality, but it gets crazier. Because the real magic isn't in the motor or even the removable battery. It's in something sitting quietly on the roof, soaking up the sun. And now we get to the feature that made jaws drop: the solar roof. At first glance, it looks like a gimmick, just a flat black panel sitting up top. But here's the surprise: it actually works, and it changes the game. While you're at work, shopping, or just parked outside, the roof is quietly absorbing sunlight and turning it into power. On a good day, that means 8 to 10 kilometers of extra range for free. Think about that: parking in the sun becomes the same as filling up your tank. Now, can it fully charge the battery by itself? No, that would take way more surface area than this little SUV has. But here's where the value really kicks in. For short city trips, 20 to 25 kilometers a day, that free solar top-up often covers half your drive. Some owners might hardly ever plug in at all. And here's the hidden bonus. Every time you avoid plugging in, the battery gets less wear and tear, which means it lasts longer, saving you even more money in the long run. So no, it's not sci-fi endless solar power, but it is free fuel trickling in every time the sun shines. And for a $2,000 vehicle, that's nothing short of revolutionary. But wait, a cheap car still raises the biggest worry in everyone's mind: safety. So the next question is, what happens when you put this little machine to the test in the real world? Here's the reality check. With a car this cheap, most people assume it'll crumble like a soda can at the first bump. And yes, you're not getting luxury-level safety features here. There are no airbags, no advanced driver assist systems. This isn't built for high-speed highways or crash test trophies. But let's zoom in on what it does have. The frame is made of metal, not flimsy plastic. That alone puts it above many low-cost three-wheelers and tiny EVs on the market. In a fender bender, you'll see dents, not shattered panels. The braking system? Basic but solid. Disc brakes up front, drum brakes in the back. At the speeds this thing drives, that's all you really need to stop safely. And for visibility, it's got LED headlights, taillights, and indicators. You're not invisible on the road. Other drivers see you. Durability-wise, ChangLi coated the body to resist rust from rain, sun, and dust. That matters in small towns and villages where cars sit outside. The motor and battery are designed for long life with minimal maintenance. Treat it normally, don't overload it, and it'll keep running for years. So no, this isn't the tank you want for a highway crash, But in the world it was built for, crowded streets, low speeds, everyday errands, it's safe enough and durable enough to outlast the skepticism. And here's where things get really wild, because while safety is good enough, the real knockout punch is the cost of actually running this little SUV. Now let's talk money, because this is where the ChangLi goes from interesting to are you kidding me? If you drive a normal gas car, you know the pain. Every trip to the pump feels like a robbery. In many countries, it costs the equivalent of 7 to 10 rupees per kilometer in fuel alone. Add oil changes, engine servicing, and all the little costs that pile up, and your monthly car budget looks like a second rent payment. Now compare that to this little $2,000 EV. With home charging, the cost per kilometer drops to less than 1 rupee. Add in solar charging, and sometimes it's basically free. That's like going from paying full price for every meal to eating half your food for free because the sun picked up the tab. Here's what that means in real terms. If you normally spend the equivalent of 4,000 rupees a month on gas, with this SUV, that bill shrinks to about 400 to 500. That's a 90% cut in your running costs. Imagine what you could do with that extra money every single month. And the best part? No oil changes, no complicated engine servicing. Fewer moving parts means fewer breakdowns. It's not just cheaper to run, it's simpler to own. So yes, the ChangLi saves money up front, but the real knockout punch is that it keeps saving you money every time you drive. But wait, low running cost only matters if the car actually fits into your daily life. And that's where this story gets even more personal. So who is this car really for? Let's break it down. If you're a student needing something cheap to get to class or part-time work, this SUV fits. If you're retired and just want an easy way to get around town without draining your savings, it fits. If you're a parent who needs a safe, weather-protected way to drop kids at school and pick up groceries, it fits. And for delivery drivers, this is where it becomes a silent weapon. 4 wheels means stability. A closed cabin means packages stay dry in the rain. And air conditioning means you can work in comfort instead of sweating it out. All while your running cost is a fraction of what a scooter or gas-powered van would eat up. The design is laser-focused on short daily trips, 10 to 20 kilometers to the market, the office, or a friend's house. The size makes parking effortless, the charging makes ownership hassle-free, and the low cost makes it actually attainable, not just for the wealthy, but for everyday people. That's why ChangLi didn't market this as a luxury product. They built it as a companion for real life. Affordable, reliable, and simple. The kind of car that makes sense the moment you imagine yourself in it. But here's where it gets wild. This isn't just a local success. The internet made this little EV a global headline. And once the world noticed, the conversation shifted to something much bigger. When the ChangLi first rolled out, it wasn't just a local headline in China. Thanks to social media, it exploded across the globe almost overnight. TikTok clips showing a $2,000 car with AC and solar panels went viral. YouTubers rushed to make test drive videos. Auto forums and Reddit threads lit up with debates. Some people laughed it off, saying, "It's a toy, it'll never last." Others said, "Wait a minute, this is exactly what cities and small towns need." Suddenly, it wasn't just a car, it was a question mark hanging over the entire auto industry. And the buzz wasn't just online chatter. Industry experts started paying attention too. If a tiny, relatively unknown company could pull this off at $2,000, what excuse did the big automakers have for charging 20 times more? Right now, the ChangLi is mostly sold in China and a handful of smaller markets, but insiders hint that international plans are in motion. Asia, Africa, South America, places where fuel is expensive, incomes are tight, and people desperately need affordable transport. And if it clears safety standards, Europe and the Middle East might be next. Here's the big rehook. This isn't just a quirky city car anymore. It could be the seed of a global disruption. And the moment that happens, the giants of the EV world will have to pay attention. So let's talk about those giants. Because if this trend takes off, companies like Tesla, BYD, and Tata aren't just facing competition, they're facing a completely different kind of threat. Here's where the story gets uncomfortable for the giants. Tesla, BYD, Tata, MG, they've built their EV business models on one idea. Go premium first, sell to the wealthy. Position electric cars as cutting-edge, desirable, futuristic, and it worked. They've dominated headlines and grabbed market share. But here's the blind spot. While they were busy chasing margins, they ignored the people who actually make up the majority of the market. The millions who don't want a rolling tech showcase. They just want something affordable, simple, and reliable. That's the exact gap Chang Locke walked into. They didn't try to out-Tesla. Instead, they flipped the script. They proved an EV doesn't need to cost $30,000 to be useful. It can cost less than a motorbike and still deliver what the average person needs. Think back to the smartphone revolution. Apple and Samsung built flashy, expensive devices. But then brands like Xiaomi and Huawei stormed in with budget models that offered 80% of the features for 20% of the price. Suddenly, the game changed. Not because they beat the giants at their own level, but because they rewrote the rules. That's exactly the threat here. If ultra-affordable EVs like the ChangLi catch on, big automakers will be forced into a fight they never wanted, competing on price instead of prestige. And if history tells us anything, that's where revolutions begin. But it gets even crazier because this isn't just about car companies. It's about what happens when an idea like this spreads across entire industries. What makes this story so much bigger than one tiny SUV is the ripple effect it could create. Because the ChangLi isn't just a bargain vehicle. It's proof that the future of EVs doesn't have to be expensive, exclusive, or locked away for the upper class. Think about it. Every big EV today has been sold as a luxury item. Tesla made driving electric look like joining a tech club. BYD and Tata tried to balance affordability, but even their budget models are still too expensive for the majority of people worldwide. And here comes a $2,000 SUV that says you don't need to be rich to own an EV. That flips the psychology of the entire market. It opens the door to an EV revolution not driven by status symbols, but by accessibility. If this spreads, here's what happens. More people adopt EVs, cities get cleaner, families spend less on transport, competitors are forced to slash prices or innovate in new directions. It's not just a car, it's a pressure point that could bend the entire industry. The last time we saw something like this was the mobile phone shift. Remember when smartphones were luxury toys? Then budget brands came in, and suddenly billions of people could afford one. That wave didn't just change phones, it changed society. Messaging, social media, apps, all of it exploded once the devices got cheap enough. The ChangLi could be that same spark for cars, an EV for the masses, not the few. And if history repeats itself, the industry won't be the same 5 years from now. Which brings us to the big finale, the takeaway that ties this whole story together. So here's the bottom line. A $2,000 SUV with 4 wheels, working air conditioning, and a solar panel on the roof isn't just a cheap car. It's a signal, a warning shot, proof that the future of driving doesn't need to be locked behind a luxury price tag. For years, the giants told you that EVs had to cost tens of thousands. They convinced the world that clean technology and affordability couldn't live in the same vehicle. And then ChangLi came along and shattered that myth overnight. Because this isn't about horsepower or autopilot modes or fancy dashboards. It's about giving ordinary people the freedom to drive electric without going broke. It's about flipping the script so that the EV revolution isn't just for the rich, it's for everyone. And that's the real takeaway. This little SUV might look humble, but it carries a message that could shake the entire auto industry. If a company can sell an EV at the price of a motorbike, then the game has changed forever. Now here's the question for you. If this SUV launched in your country tomorrow, would you buy one? Would you trust it as your daily car? Or do you think it's still too good to be true? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want to keep up with the tech that's rewriting the rules, not just in cars, but across industries, make sure to hit that subscribe button because what's coming next is even wilder.